0214 hours, international waters. 38 nautical miles northwest of the Strait of Hormuz. An MH-60R Seahawk helicopter holds a hover at 20 meters above the deck of a flagless cargo vessel running dark. No AIS signal, no navigation lights, no radio traffic on any monitored frequency. The rotor wash hammers the containers below. Inside the cabin, 6 operators from Naval Special Warfare Development Group grip the fast rope, stacked and ready, waiting for a single word. The word doesn't come. Without warning, every display in the Seahawk's cockpit goes white. The navigation system drops out. The threat warning receiver begins generating a continuous alarm tone that the crew has never heard in live operations. Not in training, not in any previous deployment. On the deck of the cargo ship below, 4 container doors swing open simultaneously. What is inside them is not cargo. The Club K system, a containerized cruise missile launcher designed specifically to be indistinguishable from standard shipping containers until the moment it isn't, elevates its launch rails and acquires lock on the American formation overhead. The SEAL team is suspended 15 meters above a ship that has just transformed into a missile battery. Moving will trigger a launch. Staying means the same thing. And then the intelligence feed from 5th Fleet arrives with information that reframes the entire situation. Buried inside the vessel's hull is a strategic electronic warfare system drawing power from a radioisotope thermal generator, a compact nuclear power source. If the ship takes armor-piercing munitions to the hull at the wrong angle, the containment integrity of that power source becomes uncertain. The Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's daily oil supply transits, could become a radiological exclusion zone for a generation. The Pentagon has 4 hours before the vessel reaches Iranian waters and disappears under the protection of Tehran's integrated air defense architecture permanently. 8 hours earlier, a KH-11 Block 4 reconnaissance satellite had flagged the contact. The vessel, designated Volga Star in the targeting package, had departed deep water on a heading consistent with a Hormuz approach, running without flag or transponder, surrounded by a close escort of 30 Iranian-flagged fishing vessels, maintaining less than 50-meter spacing, in a formation tight enough to make any precision strike from distance a civilian casualty calculation, rather than a military decision. The fishing boats were transmitting legitimate AIS identifiers. Under international maritime law, they were innocent vessels. Under Iranian operational doctrine, they were a human geometry problem designed to make the Volga Star untouchable. That was problem 1. Problem 2 appeared on the USS Abraham Lincoln sensor suite approximately 40 minutes after the satellite contact was confirmed. White noise interference spreading across GPS frequency bands in a 50-kilometer radius centered on the cargo vessel. Naval intelligence identified the emission pattern within minutes. A Pole 21 derivative jamming system, the same architecture Russia has deployed on its own warships to deny GPS-guided munitions the positional data they need to function. Every Tomahawk cruise missile in the strike group's inventory requires GPS terminal guidance. Every JDAM glide bomb requires it. The jamming envelope didn't just complicate a strike option. It eliminated the entire category of precision standoff weapons that American doctrine has been built around for 30 years. Fire into the jamming zone, and your weapons navigate on inertial guidance alone, accurate to maybe 50 meters in optimal conditions, far less under electronic attack. 50 meters of error margin in a formation of civilian fishing vessels is not a military problem. It is a war crimes prosecution waiting for a date. Moscow and Tehran had built a situation where American firepower was simultaneously overwhelming and unusable. Do you think there's a version of this scenario where US forces find a clean solution through conventional means alone? Or does the layered shield make that mathematically impossible? Leave your read in the comments. The Carrier Strike Group's admiral chose the pressure approach first, 2F/A-18F. Super Hornets pushed over from 30,000 feet and executed a supersonic low-pass directly above the fishing vessel formation. The sonic boom arriving as a physical pressure event, calculated to scatter the civilian screen through sheer instinct. Simultaneously, USS Farragut, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, accelerated into the formation's path with its long-range acoustic device active and high-pressure water cannons aimed at the nearest fishing boats, issuing unmistakable physical demands to disperse. The fishing boats accelerated and turned their bows toward the Farragut. They weren't dispersing, they were charging. 30 vessels converting from a passive human shield into an active collision threat against a $2.2 billion guided missile destroyer. International maritime law does not permit a warship to open fire on vessels that have not yet demonstrated lethal capability. Ramming a destroyer at 15 knots with a 40-ton fishing boat does not constitute clearly demonstrated lethal capability until the moment of impact, which is precisely the legal design of the maneuver. The Farragut was forced to reduce speed and alter course. The formation held. While the surface engagement was consuming the strike group's attention, the Volga Star's electronic warfare system shifted modes. The jamming shifted from broad GPS suppression to a directed high-energy emission targeted at the two Super Hornets, now low and slow after their pass. The AESA radar systems in both aircraft registered simultaneous processing anomalies. One F/A-18 reported flight control instability severe enough to force the pilot into emergency recovery procedures. Nose up, throttle to military power, defensive decoys dispensed before the aircraft could be brought back under normal control. From the E-2D Hawkeye orbiting at altitude, the radar picture deteriorated further. The Iranian coast lit up. 12 heat signatures erupting from mobile coastal launchers, C-802 anti-ship missiles, sea skimming, radar altimeter guidance, 165-kilogram warheads, Mach 0.9 terminal velocity, flying at 3 meters above the wave surface, where the ocean clutter masks them from surface radar until the engagement window collapses to seconds. Vampire calls flooded every ship's radio net. The Farragut's Phalanx C, IWS, and RAM launcher systems went autonomous, tracking and engaging inbound contacts while the ship maneuvered hard to present its smallest radar cross-section. Every inbound missile was intercepted. The cost was the formation. The Farragut's defensive maneuvering had broken its position in the intercept geometry. The Volga Star released a dense smokescreen from deck-mounted generators and pushed to maximum propulsion speed, 20 nautical miles to Iranian waters. The window was closing. The Virginia-class attack submarine USS North Dakota had been holding at 400 meters depth, directly beneath the thermal layer, for 6 hours, running so quiet that its presence was unknown to every surface and airborne asset in the area except the 5th Fleet Command Node, which had placed it there before the operation started. It had been tracking the Volga Star's acoustic signature since the vessel departed deep water, logging propulsion data, building a positional model, waiting. The ELF transmission. Extremely low frequency, the only radio signal that penetrates seawater to operational submarine depth, arrived encoded with a single authorization. The North Dakota's commander had already identified his solution. He was not targeting the ship. A single Mk-48A DCAP torpedo left the forward tube on a guidance solution set to detonate not against the Volga Star's hull, but in the water column directly beneath her propeller. A near-miss detonation designed to exploit underwater explosion physics rather than direct impact. The shaped charge detonated. A cavitation bubble expanded and collapsed in milliseconds, generating a vertical water jet that struck the ship's stern from below with hydraulic force equivalent to a direct structural impact. The propeller shaft fractured. The rudder seized. The Club K launchers on deck were subjected to the same shock load, their radar guidance systems losing alignment lock in the violence of the motion, their targeting solutions on the Seahawk above dissolving. The MH-60R was no longer in a locked-on threat environment. The SEAL team was clear. The Volga Star was drifting. Propulsion gone, steering gone. But still 20 nautical miles from the point where Iranian territorial waters and the S-500 air defense umbrella would make any further action impossible without triggering a full engagement spectrum neither side had authorized. 4 Boghammer fast attack craft, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, 80 knots, 23mm autocannon, shoulder-fired surface-to-air missiles were already departing Bandar Abbas Naval Base. 5 minutes to intercept. If they reached the Volga Star and established a tow, the vessel would enter Iranian waters under military escort. Attacking a ship under Iranian military protection is not a maritime law enforcement action. It is an act of war. One asset remained that could reach the target before the Boghamar boats did. The F-35C Block 4 had been orbiting at 35,000 feet throughout the engagement. Its AN/APG-81 radar in low probability of intercept mode, invisible to the electronic warfare environment below. GPS was still jammed. The weapon selected, an AGM-158 CLRASM, carries its own imaging infrared seeker and onboard AI target recognition algorithm capable of autonomous terminal guidance without satellite positioning. It does not need GPS to find a specific object on a ship. It needs a target signature in its recognition library and a release point above the jamming envelope. The pilot had a 2 square meter aim point, the exposed generator housing on the Volga Star's deck. the power source for the electronic warfare system, and the cooling architecture for the radioisotope core. Miss left by 1 meter and the weapon impacts a Bogomar boat now converging at high speed. Miss low by 1 meter and the warhead penetrates the hull and reaches the containment structure below. The LRASM dropped from the weapons bay. Gliding, seeker active, processing the deck geometry against its target library while threading a corridor between fast-moving surface contacts at 900 kilometers per hour. The penetrating warhead entered the generator housing from a near vertical angle. No catastrophic explosion. The confined detonation within the electrical compartment produced an arc flash event, temperatures reaching the threshold at which circuit boards, antenna arrays, and processing units transition from functional electronics to fused slag in milliseconds. The Merman system's power source, cooling network, and signal architecture ceased to exist simultaneously. Without a detonation command reaching it, the radioisotope core sank with the flooding ship intact, driven to 2,000 meters by the inrushing water, where hydrostatic pressure rendered it inert and unreachable. The Bogomar boat circled the debris field. There was nothing left to tow. The Strait of Hormuz remained open. Oil transited. Markets opened the following morning without disruption. The SEAL team landed safely aboard the Lincoln. The North Dakota descended back below the thermal layer and resumed its patrol. Here is what this engagement actually demonstrated beyond the immediate tactical outcome. The Volga Star operation was designed around a layered denial architecture: civilian shields, GPS jamming, coastal missile batteries, electronic attack. Each layer designed to prevent the specific category of response the previous layer forced the Americans toward. It was a well-constructed trap, and it failed not because American forces found a gap in the layers, but because the solution set extended below and above the layers entirely. A submarine the adversary didn't know was present. A missile that didn't need the navigation infrastructure being jammed. Assets positioned hours before the confrontation began, on a timeline the adversary had no visibility into. The lesson is not about any specific weapon system. It is about operating on a timeline your adversary cannot observe, and with assets your adversary cannot locate. The Volga Star's architects designed their denial layers against the threats they could see. They had no contingency for the threats they couldn't. The NSA transmission that reached the 5th Fleet Command node as the debris field was still settling carried a single line of intelligence. A second electronic warfare signature, identical spectral profile to the Merman system, was moving across the Syrian border toward a coastal position. Iran had anticipated losing the first ship. The question the Pentagon was already working through is the same one worth sitting with now. If the first vessel was the bait designed to exhaust the response options, what is the second one actually targeting? Leave your analysis below.